Here's how I want you to think about injecting veins. Now, first you have to make sure that the greater saphenous vein is not leaking, right? We know that. Let's assume that we know for sure that the GSV is not leaking, okay? And you've already obtained consent. You've gone over the pros and cons of having the treatment done and so on. So right now we're at the point where she's got some varicose veins here, 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 and here, and you've decided that you're going to go ahead and inject them. So what I want you to do is stand her on the table, which should be about 2 feet high, and have her with the leg that you're going to be examining with that one externally rotated, and then feel for where the veins are. So you feel along the veins, and what I'd like you to do is mark on both sides of the vein where you feel them, right? So what I tend to do is if it's a really big vein, then I'll make more of a line where I'm doing the injections. I'm not trying to say this is exactly where the injections are going to go when she's lying down. I just want to know when she's lying down where they were when she stood up, because those are the ones that are going to be the most visible with the vein light. So it gives me some indication of where to look with my vein light. Okay? So if they're relatively big veins under higher pressure, then I tend to make a bigger line on each side. And if they're a smaller vein under lower pressure, I tend to make just a little circle like that. Because when she goes and lies down, you're not going to know which ones are big and which ones are small from just using the vein light, or which ones are under high pressure or low pressure, because there is no pressure once she's lied down. Okay? So I make all of those marks, and then often at this point, I'll take a picture with the marks on so that I know exactly what I was looking at. I find that the pictures are really hard to take of varicose veins. Unless you mark them, it's hard to really see them properly in the photograph. So then I take her and I lie her down. So now her leg's like this, and she's got her little marks. She's got a mark here and a mark here, right? And when I lay her down and I look with the vein light, I'll put it up here and might do my injections. So what I'm trying to do at this stage is, my rule of thumb is that I use half a syringe, which is, in my world, I fill my syringes, my 1 ml syringe to 0.8, so half a syringe is around 0.4. And usually I'll try and do my injections about 5 centimeters apart and half a syringe in each location. Now, of course, that's going to vary, and that's where experience comes in. And I'll try and go over some case studies with you so that you know how much to put in each location. But this is sort of the general rule of thumb. You're going to work from the top and work down to the bottom. Interestingly, some people work from bottom to top, but I like top to bottom. And normally, you're going to have your stronger solutions at the top and working down to your weaker solutions. So for instance, you might in this first one use 1.5%, and then in the middle you might use 1.0%, and then 0.5% down at the bottom. Having said that, if there's a little low pressure one near the top, then it's going to be 0.5%. Again, this is where we need to talk about case studies in order to more accurately decide how much to put in which location. So here I go. I've done my injections here, 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 whatever. And you notice that my injections may not necessarily be where I made the marks when she was standing up. Because when I look with my vein light, I might be able to see more or different than what I actually saw when she stood up. So I walk along the leg with my vein light, do my injections every 5 centimeters. And then people ask me, well, aren't you supposed to go directly over the perforator, or are you supposed to go 1 or 2 centimeters from the perforator? And my answer to that is not necessarily. What I've found that works really well is to go where it's easy. And that sounds a little silly, but the reality is that if you can get a good look at it with the vein light, and you know that that's where the vein is passing and it's under relatively high pressure, it doesn't really matter whether you're on the perforator, behind it, in front of it. It works well. This system works well under any conditions. And I've never had, touch wood, I've never had a DVT, ever. And it's been like 15 years. So I'm getting less concerned that if there is a perforator, then the concern would be that it could go into the deep system and cause a blood clot, right? But this system that I use has never caused a blood clot in my hands. Right, so then I inject all those spots. And when I'm finished injecting them, then we put our cotton balls, like as I do the injection, she cotton balls this one and this one and this one and this one, right? So they all get cotton balled. And then in addition to that, what I've been doing is cotton balling between the injections. So if the path between here and here, even if I can't see the vein in here, I know it's probably connecting those two. So I'll cotton ball it all the way along there. Similarly, sometimes here's a mark that I made on the leg when she was standing up. Let's say it was this guy here, and I've still got a mark down there, but I ended up not making an injection down here, and this is really important. Even though I didn't make an injection down here, I'm going to cotton ball not only that, but where it connects into the one before it. And I'll tell you why, and this is huge. This is something that took me a few years to figure out, even though it's so obvious. Ready? This is so painfully simple, but nobody ever told me this before. And that is, if I make my injection here, and I make my injection here, and then I put a cotton ball on it, and I put a cotton ball on it, what ends up happening is that you squeeze the fluid into here, and this is where they get their phlebitis. Very interesting, and I missed this for a long time because I was wondering, like, people got phlebitis, and suddenly I started to realize, wait, no, the injection was here and the injection was here. It must be what's in the middle. So, I want you to cotton ball it all the way along. Wherever you think that there's a vein that's varicose, either you marked it ahead of time or you saw it with the vein light, then put all your little cotton balls on it. And then, of course, after you put your cotton balls on, you're going to put on your bandage, which is not a tensor bandage. I like the Vino San short stretch bandage, which you place around the leg, overlapping by half, all the way from the foot. Even if your injections are way up in the thigh, I want you to go from the foot all the way up the leg until you're 3 inches or so past where the last injection was. So here's her leg. Let's say we injected as far as here. I want you to bring the bandage up to here. And if this is her knee, then she's going to need a thigh-high stocking. So you wrap the whole thing, and then you put your stocking on. Usually I use either a 20-30. If they're quite small varicose veins, I go with 20-30 millimeters of mercury. If they're a deeper vein or larger one, then I go with 30-40. So I'd say most of the time I end up going with 30-40 millimeters of mercury. We put that on over top of this whole thing. And then if it's a big vein, I'll leave this thing, the entire thing on for 2 full days. If it's a smaller day, we can get by with 24 hours. In that time, no aspirin, no alcohol, no exercise, and she has to leave the thing on. And after the end of 48 hours, then she's allowed to take the whole thing off. But then she has to wear her stocking for a minimum of 2 weeks after, every single day during the day. I used to think stockings were a bit of a scam, frankly. I thought, what good could they possibly do? They really do. The stockings, given that in sclerotherapy we've got a vein and we're trying to irritate the two sides, push them together and make them glue, we need a clamp, right? So the first clamp is the cotton ball. The second clamp is the wrap. And the third clamp, which is the one that's going to stay on for 2 weeks or more, is the stocking. It holds the vein together. Critical. Way back when I started, I didn't use stockings very often, or I left it up to the patient. Well, you can use stockings if you want to. You can use a tensor bandage or a stocking. It doesn't really matter. It does matter. And I found out that the people who used stockings did great, and the people who didn't, it didn't work. And very frequently they would get phlebitis because they'd end up with a vein that was, instead of being shut right down, sclerosed, it would end up being like partially shut, and we get some flow in it, which just is a recipe for phlebitis. So what's the summary? Stand them up. Feel for the veins. Mark where they are. Make sure that she doesn't have a leaky GSV. Make sure that you've got a consent form signed on the chart. Lie her down. Find these veins with the vein light. Inject them about half a syringe every 5 centimeters. Put cotton balls on the injection sites put cotton balls between the injection sites and put cotton balls even on the spots that you had marked that you ended up not injecting. And then connect them all with cotton balls, then wrap the leg, and then put on the stocking, and then tell her that she has to be quiet, because if she goes out and does a 3-mile walk, the glue's not going to hold. And that's it. That's my summary of how to do varicose veins.